So this week's podcast episode, we welcome Joanna Kalafatis. Is that right?
Hello. Yes. Happy to be here.
Thank you so much for joining us. And Joanna's in Athens right now, which I'm very jealous of. And so welcome to podcast. So looking forward to your story. So tell us a bit about yourself.
Well, thank you for having me here.
Yeah, very welcome. Yeah. So who are you? Where do you live? What's your story?
Who am I? Yeah, super existential. My name is Joanna, as you said. I am a actress and a travel writer. And where I live, honestly, is a bit up in the air right now. Theoretically, I live in the U.S., but I've been splitting my time between Greece and the U.S. New York currently, just because there's so many opportunities here right now. Here, Greece/Europe. So that's, my general kind of info. I'm from Greece originally, hence why I maintain the connection. And I'm a travel writer who's a little terrified of flying, and that usually, gets people a little curious.
That's an interesting combination, isn't it?
It is, isn't it? Well, the crazy thing is I used to be not even absolutely okay. I've been in planes like almost in a lightning storm, like landing in Miami, and I thought it was hilarious. I'm like, taking videos outside of the lightning just going by. I was super, super okay with flying. And no one ever told me that phobias are things that can up later in life that you just didn't have and then occur one day. So what happened to me personally is like I had one bad experience during takeoff, but like really bad experience. Like the whole plane was just like, screaming, crying, bad times. In 2018, I want to say, taking off in the Bahamas. And since then, I've been a bit of a mess especially on takeoff. Like until I hear that ding, I'm not okay. I'm not doing okay in any part of me. But yeah,
I've feeling the ding, the seatbelt ding, or the cabin crew can get up ding.
Yes. The second I hear the seatbelt ding and the cabin crew can get up, I breathe for the first time.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. It's a lot of holding your breath.
Yeah.
Oh, but then, I realized I was getting scared, and sometimes we're better than others, but sometimes we're worse than others. I mean, I've walked into Athens airport, tears streaming down my face, not able to speak because I'm about to fly. And the woman behind the counter was very concerned for me. So I realized I had to find a way to kind of deal with it because I wasn't going to give up traveling for my work, for which it's necessary. And also, I have multiple homes in terms of places that I have friends and family and, places that are familiar to me that I love. So for me, it just became about knowing that the destination I'm getting to is so much more important to me than the fear I have to face along the way. Because, we all have our fears, but at the end of the day is like, is it something you really want to overcome? Like, I don't love, tight spaces, but I don't particularly care to go cave diving. So it's not really an issue for me,
No, fair enough. Yeah.
No, yeah. But yeah, so for me, I found multiple things very helpful. And I will say, my therapist, because, well, I spent a lot of years in LA. I have a therapist, obviously. But my therapist told me first and foremost, she's like, if you make it a goal that you never want to be scared again in a plane, you will fail and you will beat yourself up about it, because that's not the point. The point is that fear can come up for you, that anxiety can come up for you.
Yes.
But the point is for you to have the tools to be able to deal with it and identify it and process it so you can still, do the things you want to do.
Yeah.
So for me, she recommended CBT, not the other kind, the cognitive behavioral therapy, which the version she recommended for me it seems antithetical to what you want to do when you're anxious on a plane, but essentially it's leaning into the anxiety. So when I'm during takeoff, I'm trying to distract myself with like maybe watching a show or reading something, and I find I can't distract myself. And what I was essentially told is that the more your brain tries to distract from something anxiety inducing, the more your body's getting the message that there is something to be actually concerned about. So it ends up just not working for you. And what helps is kind of grounding techniques of leaning into it and being like, okay, what do I feel right now? I feel my feet on the floor. I feel like a weird, breeze on my right from that thing above you in the plane. I feel my palms are getting really sweaty. I feel my heart, but like kind of just identifying each thing little by little and leaning into the physical responses your body's having. paradoxically helps calm you down quite a bit.
Yeah.
Me, at least.
Yeah.
So
So
for
can
me,
you just rewind a bit, Joanna?
yeah, of course.
Because so we'll get a sense of, so up until 2018 you were fine,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely fine, right? And then
Oh
you,
my God. I got into play like I thought turbulence was hilarious up until 2018. I was one of those people I now despise. Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
One of those people I now despise. Interesting.
Oh, well, not despise, but I do take
I
as
know,
a personal attack when like it's during takeoff, I'm freaking out, and someone next to me is already passed out. I'm like, how dare you? How dare you just be so calm right now?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Okay, so 2018.
Yes.
So is that when you started seeking some help from this therapist, or was this a sort of an ongoing thing anyway? If you don't mind me asking.
Oh, no, I was going to therapy regardless. I was an actress trying to, make it in this industry. Therapy seemed like the thing to do in general. But then she did also help me specifically with this issue.
So your job is, so you've got the acting thing, but there's also a travel element to.
Correct. So
So tell us.
I also run a travel blog, which I started when I started acting. I always wrote articles for various publications on the side, just freelance for extra money, because acting is not the most dependable stream of income.
No.
Yes. And then at some point, I got very tired of writing for other people because I couldn't write in my voice. I couldn't write about things I cared about. So I started a travel blog of my own because I traveled a fair amount. And also, my job took me sometimes to all these different places that I got to explore, which is a great side effect of being an actress. And then the blog started kind of taking off. So then I got offers to write without having to chase them down, which was wonderful. And I got, yeah, and some income from the blog itself. So it kind of started a parallel path.
So this is great because obviously you'll have some people now that will want to read these. What's your kind of angle as a travel writer? What's your slant, if you like?
Right. Well, for me, I really favor travel. It has a lot to do with like, my blog is called Lose the Map, losethemap.com. And the name came about because I really favor kind of getting a little lost in every place, meeting, immersing yourself in the culture, really like opening up dialogue with people you encounter, learning about, traditions and histories and what people think about what's going on in the country now. So, like one of the articles I love to write is, kind of myth busting articles, like 10 things you didn't know about, X country, or like myths you think you know about Amsterdam, but are like not true, because I do find that there's a lot of stereotypes in our world that are just untrue about places.
Yeah.
And that anytime you visit a destination, it is so much more complex than you can ever imagine. I mean, the more time you spend somewhere, the more you don't know a place, essentially, in a very strange way, because the more you realize there's so much more to learn about it. And so,
so this is quite an interesting sort of thing, isn't it? For somebody, they're applying. I always find that just out of curiosity.
correct.
If you had to think of places that you've been that have surprised you the most, or have been the most interesting to write about, where would that top couple of places be, maybe?
I mean, so many. I'm actually going to list the trip I just got back from. So the writing's not up yet, but it will be soon. I just went to Georgia, the country.
Yeah.
I've been to Georgia, the state. It was more what I expected than Georgia, the country. I got back 2 days ago, and it was absolutely fascinating because I'd never really been to that part of the world. I'd never been to the Caucasus in general. And it is truly, for such a relatively small country in terms of landmass and people, it is such a crossroads of all these different cultures. Like even in the buildings, in people, in the culture, you see influences from like Iran, from Russia, from Turkey, from Europe, in this, again, very relatively tiny place in the world. And it was also a country where I haven't been to many countries that don't really have a lot of Western tourism and aren't really even set up for that. Like speaking English was definitely, not easy for most of it. And it fascinated me because it has this rich, deep history. Tbilisi is just such a fascinating city with all the different like cultural aspects of it. There's a lot of mixed feelings, obviously, towards their neighbor to the north, which has colonized two parts of their country. But then also, they're their number one source of tourism and provide a lot of services. And there's a lot of just interesting history there and interesting present reality. So yeah, I just found Georgia completely eye-opening, and especially because it's one of the few countries where I didn't really have a solid visual image of what
Mm.
I would even expect. And that's what everyone told me when I went, I was uploading stories. They're like, wow, you make Georgia look really pretty. And I actually realized I had no concept of what Georgia looked like before before your stories. Yeah.
All right. Okay. Yeah. Well, I met somebody from there recently, and I was thinking, I suddenly it dawned on me, I know diddly squat about that country. Just
Yeah.
literally, I thought,
No.
it's heard of it, nothing, knew
Do
nothing.
you know it's not even called Georgia? They call it Sakartvelo. Their language is insane, by the way. Their language I could not learn if you gave me 100 years and like a 20-year head start. But coming from a country where also no one in this world calls us by our name, it was really nice to bond over that. Um, but yeah, it was just very, very different and very interesting because I feel like now in so many places that have become so touristy, which is so much of the world, you have to go out of your way to like really find the, quote unquote authentic places, local places. And in Georgia, it was actually finding a touristic place was kind of an aberration. There were like two places that had, some touristy vendor setups, and everything else was just like it's locals and you.
Just normal. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just normal.
Oh, interesting. Okay. So you go around, you write about all these different countries.
Correct.
So since 2018, how are you doing with this sort of fear of flying? So go back to your story about leaning into all that.
Huh. Well, since 2018, I mean, immediately when it happened, I wasn't doing well because I had a connecting flight from Atlanta to LA, and I was seriously thinking of renting a car, just going the rest of the way. I'm
Wow.
like, I can be there in 3 days. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. I can do it. Yeah, it hasn't really slowed me down. There are some trips that I prefer to take by car. I won't say that's completely my fear of flying, though. For me, it's like I do love road trips. I've also been trying to be more eco aware and sustainable. So like
Yeah.
if I can drive, I'll drive. If I can take a train, I'll take a train. Um, so but it definitely yeah, so it hasn't influenced my actual traveling, but it has influenced the days leading up to each trip. Because the weird thing is sometimes the anxiety isn't even on the flight itself. I mean, it is, but it's also sometimes like the day before a trip, I'll be really stressed. And I know that that's causing it. The fact I'm about to be in a plane is causing it. Actually, this trip to Georgia was so last minute that it didn't give me time to get anxiety, which was very helpful. It was so last.
So you need to plan it.
No, I booked like 3 days before, like, and I had so many things to do up until leaving. I'm like, I can't even think about stress right now.
You couldn't schedule in some anticipatory anxiety.
No, I couldn't schedule in any anxiety buildup. It was just not in the program. But I've had to be very conscious of the fact that like I'm probably going to be touchy and stressed. Anyone in my vicinity is probably very conscious of the fact the day before.
Yes.
And I just need to keep finding ways to kind of deal with that because you can't just, part of you is like, all right, well, maybe the stress will come up, maybe the anxiety will come up, maybe the fear. And it's also very strange because there are times where I'm almost 100% okay. And there are times where it ratchets up. And it's important to identify. Well, that's the thing. It's important to identify what causes it because obviously for every person that'll be different. But I do think phobias can be very like sometimes they'll hit you really bad and sometimes they'll barely kick in. When I'm very tired, it's helpful. Again, when I have no energy to be anxious, it's incredibly helpful. If I'm taking like a 3.
So you find that actually helpful being tired?
I find it very helpful because I just can't, my body doesn't have a capacity to get anxious.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, because sometimes it's the other way around, isn't it? Because when they make themselves tired because they think then they'll sleep through the fight, but actually they have less resources or resilience to deal with being anxious. So, but for you, it's the other way around.
So that's why I said, for everyone, it's going to be a little different. Like for me personally, that helps. For me, when I travel with my dog, it helps a lot. She keeps me very calm because essentially anytime I'm traveling with someone, especially if that person is nervous, it actually helps me because me being put in the position of calming someone else down calms me down. And my dog's actually not. My dog's a better flyer than I am, but she's there for me.
Yeah. Nice.
Yeah. So there are certain factors that will help. Weirdly, I've realized, and that's why sometimes it's important to, I think if you can afford it, if you have the time for it, to go to some therapy because a fear of flying might be reflecting other things. So for me, for example, one of the other big ones is if I booked a trip for like no reason, just because I wanted to, I will be more anxious. If it's something for work, if it's something that was done for me, it's like, well, I have to do this, so my anxiety is less. But then, through therapy, you realize that's a reflection of other things. That's a reflection of like, oh, you made a choice on what if it goes badly, essentially. So that's why I think therapy is important, because a lot of phobias, obviously there's the fear of the actual plane, but like a lot of our fears, I think, are reflective of other ongoing issues we have in our life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's interesting, that one about you book it, you more anxious.
Yes, because now I've made that choice. No one has made me do it. I've made that
That's
choice.
interesting. Again, that goes to show how different it is, because sometimes when people feel that they've chosen, that they're then taking responsibility for it and they have less anxiety, but you just do everything the opposite, don't you, basically?
I'm an opposite kind of.
You're just awkward. That's what, yeah. And again,
Just like being contrary, honestly. It's just, no, but that's why I said the number one thing is to just realize your own triggers, because everyone's just going to have such different things. Like, I was talking to a friend about it who was like, yeah, and during landing, I'm also a wreck. I'm like, I'm actually fine during landing. I don't know. I don't care. Landing, I'm good.
Yeah. So is it just literally that? So you might get it beforehand, but you get it for that takeoff bit.
And bad turbulence.
The ding. Oh, the turbulence as well.
Is also not fun. Bad turbulence. Like normal turbulence, fine. There was one time where I was crossing the Atlantic, and right over that, anyone who's flown multiple times, right over that ridge, you tend to get some, like the Mid-Atlantic ridge, some bad turbulence. And I swear, for an hour straight, it was like someone was banging on the plane with a hammer. And I was like in a state of paralysis. I'm just like, I can't.
Mess.
A hot mess. And I finished my wine, and the flight attendants sat down. I couldn't get more, so it was just battle.
Then. So they were sat down as well. So it was obviously a bit rock and roll.
Oh, they were sat down, and it made me anxious because they were sat down real fast. Usually the pilot does the announcement of like, if you could take your seats. This was like, flight attendants, take your seats, and they just sprinted towards up. I'm like, oh no, it's about to go bad.
Yeah.
Very bad.
Well, I can understand why that would, that would make most people, have pause for thought.
Correct.
But even if you're not bothered by turbulence, but I'm not. You got your seatbelt on and you're safe. It's it still might make you think something. That's kind of understandable, isn't it?
And that's kind of the issue, right? Because like logically, I feel like at this point, pretty much everyone knows, like, yeah, the plane's the safest form of travel. Everyone knows the statistic. You're more likely to have an accident on the way to the airport than flying.
Yeah.
But the problem with fears and anxiety is that what you logically know and what your brain and body are doing do not coincide a lot of the time. So, it is also helpful for me to enter some of that into my thinking. Like I'll watch the flight attendants and be like, she's doing this like 12 times a month and she's fine and you'll be fine. It's fine. But yeah, it also helps me personally, going back to what you said before, if it's an airline in a route I'm familiar with and I trust and like, I'm much more comfortable.
Okay.
Like Georgia, a part of it might have been, for example, it was a completely new route. So I don't know where the problem areas are. I don't know if we're expected to like land a certain way or take off a certain way, mostly take off. So I'm like, is this normal? I feel like we're too low to the ground.
So that's worse then.
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
It's worse when you don't know. Yeah. And you don't know what to expect. Yeah.
Yeah. But if you do know, then that familiarity thing helps you.
It does, because, for example, there are certain approaches, like even I went to visit a friend of mine who now lives in Salta, Argentina. And even then I didn't know, but she had warned me. She's like, just so you know, the descent, it's mountains all around. So it's just completely bumpy the last 45 minutes. And it was relatively calm about it because someone had warned me, like, this is what it's going to be. It's totally normal. This is what you should expect. I'm like, okay.
Yeah. So that helped. Yeah. Okay. So when you think about your fear, obviously you're getting help and you can find identified when, sorry, that sounds a bit wrong some way. Do you see that it's improving, or you see that there's hope?
So there's definitely hope, because I'm still traveling at the end of the day. It's improving for sure, in the sense that there'll be fewer times that I'm truly freaking out. It also improves the more you do it and the more you're exposed to it. Like one of the hardest flights I had was right after lockdown, where I hadn't traveled in so long. So getting in a plane had now really become a novel experience. Whereas if I've traveled like 14 times in the last 6 months, it's fine. But So I'd say it's getting better in the sense that it happens less often for me, where I truly feel like a lot of anxiety. And when I do manage it, that being said, it is sometimes a little disheartening that occasionally it will flare up to a very anxious point for some reason.
Yeah.
And knowing that that still might happen is frustrating. It's still something I can deal with. It's still something that doesn't, stop me from doing anything. Because I think, fears to a certain extent, as long as it's not stopping you from doing things, it is what it is. But it is a little frustrating for me that occasionally it'll crop up. It'll just start screaming in my ear, essentially.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there may be some sort of trigger points that are different, or there's something that's happening there.
Yeah.
It's a curious one, isn't it? Because it feels like you're kind of like getting past it, and then you've got the occasion where it might just creep back in. What's that all about?
I wish I knew. I mean, I've identified some of my triggers, but I think this is one of my therapist's words like really come into play of if you make it a goal that you'll never feel this again, you will fail and you'll beat yourself up about it because then you'll be like, why am I not doing it? Why am I not feeling 100% okay? And then you're just going to feel, bad about yourself. Like you failed at something. Yeah.
Yeah. So perhaps then you could tell us a bit about some of the things you've learned that might be quite helpful for other humans to think about in terms of, like how you might prepare yourself, what you do,
Sure.
if anything happens, in the moment, any techniques that you've learned, that'd be great.
For me, it's multiple things. Like the one thing I discussed is grounding techniques helps, like leaning into the anxiety, and anyone who has anxiety is probably familiar with them because they're recommended for general anxiety, like just identifying what's happening in your body and things around you and all that. And just
So not everybody would do it, and also sometimes people, this could be their first podcast, and some other people have talked about it. But what does it mean to you? What do how do you ground yourself?
Well, for me, I ground myself by just identifying all the responses that are happening in my body, everything my body is feeling. So, for example, like, oh, I can feel my heart is going really fast. Like I know my left thigh is sore right now. There's like a weird breeze on my hair, from the thing that is just identifying everything.
So did you say these things? Do you write them, or do you just sort of
I
think
say them internally for the benefit of the passengers around.
my leg's hurting. My leg.
So Aaron Marshall doesn't come over like, man, you got, I don't know what's up. See what you got to go. You're just identifying.
Imagine if you did verbalize it,
Honestly,
feel the breeze on my head. What?
Like, oh, she's not well. Well, it's a great way to get a row all to yourself. I'm quite sure.
Probably a cabin. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like everyone just disappears. So for me, that's really helpful.
So is that the first thing you would do?
That is the first thing I always do. That's the first thing I respond with. I also find for me, being able to employ humor really helps, and like dark humor. So I will literally start a conversation. I realize I'm sounding maybe not so stable right now. The more we're talking about this, I will start an internal conversation, being myself.
Yeah.
I don't hear a voice, to be clear. I am just having internal dialogue. Right. No, but when those ridiculous thoughts come up of like, something happens like during takeoff and it's a little janky or whatever, and your inner voice starts having those ridiculous catastrophizing thoughts of like, oh no, it's not flying at the right altitude. It's not this. And then I think it's important to have your own humorous voice come in of like, right, how many times have you thought this? And how many times has anything happened to plane? Zero? Right. Okay. You're being ridiculous. Like I think it helps to kind of, deal with that catastrophizing voice inside yourself, which
okay, so that's interesting. So you got the catastrophizing voice. So you bring in another voice from somewhere else to talk to yourself
internally. I'm not sure.
Okay, yeah, that's all right. Yeah, and so, but the reason I'm not poking fun at you because
No.
I do know people that do like they sometimes change the tone of the voice. It's a recognized technique. Like you might make it like I don't know, Mr. Bean or something, right. Or you do something with the
For
voice.
me, it's just my most sarcastic New Yorker self of like, right, okay, sure, the plane's gonna go down. How many times have you thought that? You're being insane. It's never happened. Like, right. So it's just
you've got a sarcastic New Yorker guy that's in and takes the mick out of the other one, right? Okay.
Exactly. It's like you're being a little much right now.
If we look at it, so although I'm taking a look at it, you're observing something, you're noticing you're doing something, and you realize your thoughts are not you, and you're interrogating them. Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
because on a more serious note, I do think for a lot of people, at least with anxiety with fears, it does register like an other voices coming in and kind of drowning yours out. So I think I've heard that feeling from a lot of people. I felt that feeling as myself. So I think it's important to have your own, whatever voice makes you feel confident, come back and, follow that.
All right. So sarcastic New Yorker. Okay.
Sarcastic New Yorker, great tip. There, if you please find a sarcastic New Yorker and have them talk
excellent.
during
Yeah,
the
brilliant. So what else?
In preparation, I will say, this is not during the flight, but in preparation, I find it very helpful to learn a lot about how planes work. Because especially for people who are more like nerdily inclined, for me, having like a rational understanding of how the plane is doing everything it's doing helps. And the fact that when you read about planes, you realize how safe they are. If you're too lazy to read, like I have a couple pilot friends, for example, I'm like, just talk to me about what's happening when this happens. And I find it very reassuring to be like, okay, I get how all this works. I get how we have turbulence and the plane is fine. I get it. I get it now on a conceptual level. That's obviously not something to do while you're in the middle of a flight. I mean, unless it's a really long flight and you're bored and you want to read, I guess. But
yeah.
But those things have helped a lot. For me, again, just like reminding myself, keeping eye contact with like flight attendants and just being like, okay, they do this all the time, and they're fine. They're like,
hang on a second. That needs some clarifying.
Just let me for anyone who wants to be creepy, let me refrain.
They're walking along with their little trolleys going, why is that?
No.
Staring at us?
It's a wonder I've not been kicked off any flight, just verbalizing a dialogue.
You mean the woman that said that she's got a breeze on her head? Yes, that one. Yeah. Okay, so the weird, but no, we've got sarcastic thing you're noticing.
I'm saying keeping an eye on the people who work on the plane, because just seeing them calm and going about their, just glancing over and be like, okay, they're calm, they're going about their day and they seem to not care, so you're fine. Those things, I mean, really, really help for me. But yeah, I guess those would be my top tips, and it really is just something of identifying, like we said, identifying personal triggers for everyone, but also always keeping in mind that, like, okay, I'm scared, but I'm going to go to a new country that I really want to go to. Or I'm scared, but I'm about to see my family after so long. Or like just keeping that end, whatever it is at the end of your flight, in mind. Hopefully it's not a boring conference, but like, hopefully it's something that gets you excited.
Yeah. So that's another thing, isn't it? So you're visualizing kind of somewhere that you want to be. So there's a reason for doing it. You do think physically in terms of, like do you do any breathing or posture work or anything like that?
I did do breathing exercises with like a meditation app when I first started. Now I've kind of weaned off that. I don't really so much need that unless I'm super anxious. I'll put it on. Yeah. But there's like a million, like Calm is a great meditation app. I think just having a 10-minute meditation going that walks you through breathing, so you don't even have to think of it. You're just listening to someone. They're telling you how to breathe and what to do is super, super helpful. Again, it's back to like getting back into your own body and not in this weird, like crazy anxious place. So
can you tell me say a bit more about getting back into your own body? Because I know for you, these are obviously
right. For me, I've been doing it for so long that
some people listen to this, that it'll be a revelation to them to sort of say, oh, I can do it like that. So that's why I'm being really
no, of course. So like I said, with the help of meditation app, they kind of talk you through how to slow down your breath and focus on your breathing and breathing in and out in conjunction with the meditation app talking to you. It also will give you some of those grounding techniques I talked about, where it'll be like, really feel your stomach, really feel your chest, really and just like focus on different parts of you. So you just get back to a calmer place. I'm not a neuroscientist, so I can't tell you exactly why that happens, but I do know that actually focusing on the physical phenomena in your body does relieve a lot of anxiety and does get you more focused and more present in the moment. Because essentially, when you have all that anxiety, it is a way of being completely unpresent in the moment, because all you're thinking is like all these horrible things that might happen, but you're not actually there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, just experiencing the nothing that is happening. Yeah.
you're imagining the worst thing going on, aren't you?
Right.
Sort of like, rather than sort of actually what is happening. Yeah, so that kind of makes sense. Okay, so I feel like there's more gold here to dig for.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit about other things you do. Like, so you said that first bit is the tricky part for you, and then the ding. What do you say to yourself at the ding point that makes it okay?
I don't even say anything. I breathe out because for me, my
So
back.
you holding your breath this whole? Because it's like 3 minutes, isn't it?
You
Till the
don't
ding.
know because I'm doing my breathing exercises, but I breathe a sigh of relief for sure. And like immediately, all my anxiety levels just go down immediately. It's like at this point, probably have a Pavlovian response to something somewhere. But yeah. So I mean, for me, it's just because my trigger was I had my traumatic experience, I should say, or whatever that started all this happened during takeoff. So that's why for me that's such a
Yeah.
thing. Um, but then, during the flight with turbulence and all that, it really honestly goes back to a lot of the same. It helps to have someone to talk to, if you're traveling with someone, obviously, just to do all that. It helps to really take advantage. I mean, this is also general for flights. Really take advantage of that time to just relax and read your books and watch your movies. We get so little time where we can't be bothered by phone calls all the time.
It's true.
Flights are great for it. Just take advantage of your non-connectivity time. Okay, so you never get it anymore. And I think all that does help also relieve anxiety because then you're just like, the more I think you see flights as a little treat or me time, the less assorted anxiety you will have with them, and the more you see it as like, oh, this horrible thing I have to go through that I hate, the more the more your general body stress response is going to be up. So I think having a general view of flights of how the great things you could do. And look, I get that not everyone, I get that if you're taking like a 2 hour like Ryanair flight in the back of the thing next to the toilet, I get it's not going to be like the best experience. I get it. But like figuring out ways to make that work for you, especially as someone travels frequently. Like for me, planes are like, oh, I can just get all this, I'm in the middle of writing a book. I'm like, oh, I can get so much writing done because, I have no distractions. Or like, oh, I haven't seen movies, so many movies I want to see. Let's see what's on the entertainment system. I'll catch 3 of them and just like indulge and, snack and watch them. I think seeing planes in general as, this more welcoming environment helps with all that, where you get to treat yourself.
No, I agree. I think it's one of those rare times. People say, they say about this, you shut the door, and I said this, I was recording the podcast this week, and someone says, yeah, you can't get out. I said, yeah, but let's think about it. They can't get in.
Yeah, exactly.
But the world, it can't get in. You're isolated from the world. It's a little bit of escape time,
There's no better excuse than I was on a flight. I could not get back to you. I was on a flight. Could not. It's a rock solid excuse. You literally cannot answer.
I hated the fact when they brought the Wi-Fi in. So I just thought, oh, this was a time when you could escape. Now you can still be contacted. But yeah, I understand that people like to be.
I will also say little things during the flight that are good flight habits in general, but also help is, if you can get up a couple times and kind of maybe walk back to the bathroom, walk back up. And it's recommended for a lot of things physically, but also just like getting up and moving around again helps keep your body a little more even keel rather than just being in a seat. Like,
no, I agree. Because, you'd never, I always say this, you would never just sit, would you? Even at home, you wouldn't sit for 4 hours.
So you'll get up and go get a snack, go to the bathroom, go outside, something. Yeah.
Anything else? Any other wisdom? What else you got?
Any other wisdom? I mean, I think that's most of it for me. Again, for me, a lot of it is just like, I really, really didn't want this fear that was at some point mentally like near debilitating for me on flights. Like it was getting just very bad. And I realized that I was not okay with just resigning myself to it and leading a life where I can't go back home to Greece, where I can't see anyone I love in other cities, where I can't travel for my job. I didn't want that life. And so for me, it just became of paramount importance to really, really find ways to work through it. And I think like, with most fears, if you just keep in mind, like, why do I want to combat this? Why do I want to overcome this? Why do I want to deal with this? It's so important when you keep that driving, motivating factor in mind.
Yeah. And yeah, I agree. In terms of your belief system, then,
Yeah.
do you see a time where you'll be 100% okay with this, or do you think you're stuck with some level of this forever?
You know, they've told me not to expect that. But I do think I've gotten significantly better enough that I do think it's possible that it'll be a light to non-existent anxiety within the next 5 years, hopefully.
Right. Was there even a time span on it?
Oh, yeah. No. We have
Years, yes.
yeah.
That's interesting. Yes. Okay. So you have that. You still have that belief that like because
As the belief that it'll be so little that it'll barely matter. Like, I won't really need to do much to cope. Yeah.
and how's that going to happen then?
Honestly, oh my God, this is so personal to me and random, but I think the more like I've had a really good last couple of years professionally.
Mm.
Um well, I'm trying to say this out sound like a brat. I've had a really good couple of years professionally. And I think the more flying becomes like, a part of my job, like, oh, I'm going there, I'm gonna do this great job, and I'm gonna make money, and I'm going there. The more it's like, oh, I'm just like this person who travels a lot. It's like, and the more it comes from me this part of a lifestyle that I love, the more I'm like, yeah,
Mm.
yeah, I think I'll love it. I think I'll completely get over the anxiety because what am I gonna do? Not be a jet setter? Come on. I mean, you know what I mean. I'm exaggerating, obviously, but like it helps to have those exaggerated thoughts. So yeah, I think that is probably also helping all that.
And the sarcastic, and your kid would be retired. Do you think?
You know what? She's always in me. So she's always there, regardless of whether I'm in a plane or not. But yeah, maybe in a plane she can go to sleep. But
Yeah. No, that's really good. I've got to ask questions. Nothing to do with fear of flying. I'm always amazed that while I'm amazed that you said that one of the things that you would do is, I've been dying to watch some films, and I think I can't. How does an actor enjoy watching films, knowing what's going on, and are you able to suspend disbelief?
I love films. It's okay. No shade to other people in this industry, but most people I know who are disillusioned by films are like kind of in the practical production part of it. Not even the practical production, not the physical production, but like the financing and all that. Uh, People get to the film industry because they're in love with films. I mean, I would actually say knowing what's going on has heightened the enjoyment of films for me because I can see things and be like, oh, I wonder if they couldn't get that actress back, and that's why this clearly like shot differently. It's just
Right, okay.
having an insight into the process for me makes it so much better because at the end of the day, as a film is doing its job, it suspends your disbelief for you. Like it draws you
Mm.
so much that you're not thinking of like, hmm, I wonder what, oh, sorry. I wonder what boom mic they used or something like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're an audio tech, you might be thinking that probably, but no, but for me, like, God, I really love the work I do, and I really love films, and I don't get to watch as much of them as I'd like to in day-to-day life, just because so much is going on, and I feel like especially in our current world, it's become increasingly hard to just sit for 2.5 hours and just watch something without being your phone or pausing to go get something or so having that uninterrupted movie watching experience is absolutely wonderful. That being said, I do pick and choose what films I watch on a plane because most is going to be more intimate, more character dramas. I'm not going to watch like, a Marvel movie or Oppenheimer on a screen, like, like 10 inches. Not. So I pick and choose what I'm going to watch, which actually is great because a lot of time it gives me, especially on international flights that have so many movies from other countries, I can watch more intimate character dramas that I wouldn't find at home, that I wouldn't think to see at home, that, might be hard to focus on at home. I can watch it all on a plane.
No, that makes sense. I mean, the reason I asked about that was apart from being nosy, but I just thought, is it because it's your curiosity around that is probably quite a helpful thing. Like some people like do Sudoku or stuff like that because it draws them in. And so for you, the way you watch these particular films, you're choosing them deliberately so they're absorbing and engaging, it's keeping you occupied, isn't it?
100%. And that definitely also helps me on a plane. That being said, I'm pretty sure I think almost anyone could find something that absorbs them to do during those hours, to read about a subject. They like to do puzzles. I also love puzzles. Every time I fly with my mom, she gets out, her iPad with a crossword puzzle. We just start going through them. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, I think, almost anyone can find something that is absorbing them or just
There are some people that have said they watch things they've watched before because then they find it comforting,
That's what's the comfort watching. That's
Yeah.
nowadays. Yeah, and it could be just something different for someone else. Maybe someone else wants to download a podcast railing about politics, and that they'll engage with it and be like, yeah, that's up, but whatever works for you, honestly, whatever works for you. And yeah, take advantage of the few hours in our modern world where you don't have to, have some form of ADD.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah,
I agree. So I'm going to ask you for your final mic drop bit of advice in a minute. Okay, so you're sort of like, you're pissy, like, here it is. But just before we do that, if people want to follow your blog or anything, can you just remind us how they can, follow you whichever way, wherever you are, and obviously we'll.
You can find me on my blog at Lose the Map, which is losethemap.com. You can also find me on Instagram, in which I'm the most active, under my name, Joanna Kalafatis, Joanna.Kalafatis, if we want to be specific. I have also in the process of starting a YouTube channel, and that's up as well under my name, once again, Joanna Kalafatis.
Same sort of stuff, or is this something else?
It's mostly going to be the travel stuff. I already have a couple videos up. I have so much footage, and editing is, as you probably know, a whole thing on its own.
Yes.
Yes. So you can find me on those places, or if you want to see what I have coming up acting wise, you can see my IMDb and check me out on. I'm on a show right now called Maestro in Blue on Netflix. So if you want to see me there, you can also see me.
What's it called, sorry?
It's called Maestro in Blue. I'm going to use the Greek pronunciation, Maestro. So like a conductor. It's on Netflix right now internationally, so you can check that out. And
so you're all busy. You're getting around, don't you?
Busy. I've been getting busy, but that's why I gotta travel. It's all over the place.
Yeah, and it's good because you can see that the impact of not being able to travel is going to have it would be so devastating for you with your work. So you're at him now where you're on that trajectory of like getting more work. You have to be able to travel.
Exactly. And like for travel writing, it would absolutely annihilate my work, because what would I do if I couldn't get on a plane? I guess I could become very specific about my country, but that's pretty much it. And then for acting, it's like especially with this industry, you really, when you're trying to come up the ranks, you can't be saying no to good opportunities for almost any reason, honestly. So yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, of course. Okay, so
yes.
So our big close then, your final kind of like motivational message to people who may be listening thinking, oh yeah, it's okay for her. What would your advice be?
My final motivational advice would be, get to know yourself really well, really focus on everything your body's feeling, and most of all, always remember why you want to travel and what is on the other end anytime you start to waver in combating your fear. Always just visualize as hard as you can that end destination, goal, family member, friend, job, whatever it is.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Joanna, thank you very much. That was great. Thank you
So much.